One of the first things that you should know about if you're going to be buying a home in Marietta is the different parts of Marietta. For example, this is East Cobb and it's a bit more residential. This part of Marietta is considered West Cobb. It's kind of a mix of commercial and residential. This is South Cobb. It's some residential and quite a bit of industrial parts. But where we are right now is like the downtown part of Marietta, and this is essentially where the split is between East Cobb and West Cobb. And those are two very different parts of Marietta. And really, Marietta is one of the largest suburbs in all of Metro Atlanta. So buying a home here is, you really have to know where you're going to be buying a home in Marietta. I know a lot of folks are going to be working near this area. And so this is a really popular part of town to want to buy a home in so that you can be close to all of the things that are around here. Lockheed Martin, there are so many big companies here around here, UPS, Home Depot, so many. And so this is really a big popular part of Metro Atlanta for people to want to buy a home in. So let's take a look at what these different areas are like, and then we'll also talk about buying a home in these different parts of Marietta. This downtown part of Marietta is kind of like the most built up area, the most developed, and so the rest of Marietta doesn't quite look like this. But this square, or Marietta Square as we call it, this is actually the very middle of the square. This fountain here is like the iconic Marietta Square fountain, and we have a bit of a park area here in the middle of the square. There's also a playground on the other side of Marietta Square down there. But there's also a bunch of shops and restaurants there. That stage often has performances, Memorial Day or 4th of July or Christmas presentations. But the rest of the square kind of has this vibe over here. And so you see they've got a lot of old buildings. I mean, this is kind of the historic part of Marietta. And so they've got these old buildings here all along Marietta Square. But what's important about buying a home here in the city of Marietta is that you would have higher property taxes if you bought a home in this area. So not all of Marietta is in the city of Marietta. I know that sounds weird, but really there is a large portion of Marietta that is like unincorporated Marietta. It's just really part of Cobb County. And so if you live in an area where the home address is Marietta, but you're not in the city of Marietta, right around this area here within a few miles of Marietta Square, if you're not within a few miles of the square, you would only be paying Cobb County property taxes. If, however, you live within the city proper of Marietta, which is within a few miles of here, you would not only have Cobb County taxes, but you would also need to pay the city of Marietta property taxes. So this is super important if you're thinking about buying a home here. While it is nice and convenient to have the walkability to all of these shops and restaurants, it comes with a bit of a price tag and having to increase your property taxes. If you're buying a home in Marietta, or you just have any questions about what it's like to buy a home here, feel free to call, text, or email me anytime. I really appreciate everybody who has reached out. Thank you so much to everybody who has reached out. We love helping people make the move here to Marietta. While the Marietta Square area here has that kind of city feel, the rest of Marietta, like that East Cobb part and the West Cobb, even South Cobb, has more of a suburban feel. So it's not somewhere that you're going to easily be walking around. Of course, if you lived within a couple miles of here, or maybe 1 mile, depending on how much you're willing to walk, you would be able to walk to this area. So it has more of that city feel. You could get around very easily. And so that's really a big difference in buying a home within a mile or two of Marietta Square versus buying a home in the more suburban parts of Marietta. No question that Marietta Square is like one of the highlights of all of Marietta. Even people who don't necessarily live super close to Marietta Square, they regularly come to this area. Even people who don't live in Marietta. I mean, people who live in Kennesaw, Smyrna, all around, this is a common place for people to come, find a restaurant or go shopping or whatever. this is really a highlight for a lot of the people who live in this area. Now, prices of homes around these different parts of Marietta as well are going to differ depending on what part of the city you're in. So around here, super close to Marietta and Marietta Square, where you're already having to pay higher property taxes, you're going to find that the home prices are around 600, 650. They actually range quite a bit. And one of the things you should know is that because this is the historic part of Marietta, this is also where the homes are the oldest. So if you lived within a mile or two of Marietta Square, you should expect to be buying one of these like super historic, potentially 1920s, 1930s houses. And while those houses have a lot of charm and a lot of character, and there's really a lot of cool aspects to owning a historic home, they are also a lot of work. So certainly something to think about. I'd say the least expensive part of Marietta is like the South Marietta area. Average home price there is probably about 400 to 450. And then of course you got to remember that there's a direct correlation to like, how nice the schools are in the area and the crime. So the south part of Marietta tends to be not quite as desirable as other parts of Marietta. I'm certainly not saying that the south part of Marietta is bad. I actually used to live in South Marietta and I miss it there. It's a great part of town, great community there. Lots of people who live around there love the area where they live. But compared to, for example, East Cobb, where you have Lassiter High School and Pope High School, and it's like a 10 out of 10 for the public school ratings everywhere, South Cobb or South Marietta, the public schools are like a 6 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10. So not quite as nice. And then speaking of the east part of Marietta, this is again where you're going to find Lassiter High School, Pope, Walton High School as well. Super safe area, lots of great community there as well. But the average home price around there is going to be about $700,000. So of course you're paying for that nicer area. And East Cobb is generally thought of by the locals as like the nicest part of Marietta. My absolute favorite part though of Marietta is the West Cobb area. So everything west of this Marietta Square area, this is where I think you really find the most bang for your buck, the most home for your money, and the schools there are still very good, 8 out of 10 schools. And so lots of young families there looking for the lower cost of living that you can find in West Cobb compared to East Cobb. And then I would say that the average home price in West Cobb is probably about $500,000. So a big difference when you compare West Cobb to East Cobb. Again, West Cobb is really my favorite part of all of Marietta. In fact, it's probably even one of my favorites when you compare all of the suburbs of Metro Atlanta. When it comes to which part of town has the highest demand or the most amount of people trying to buy a home in that area, I would say that's actually the south part of Marietta. This is where the home prices are the lowest. So naturally that part of town has got the most amount of people trying to buy a home. And then after that, I would say it's the East Cobb part, East Marietta, because of like the excellent school districts. Again, this is a big one that has got a lot of demand for homes. And so average days on market in South Cobb or in South Marietta is probably about 5 or 6 days right now. And then in East Cobb, again, you're looking at about an average of 5 to 6 days for the average listing in East Cobb. West Cobb, again, is my favorite and doesn't have quite as much demand. You're probably looking at about an average of 10 days on market, maybe down to 7, just kind of depends. I mean, for a move-in ready home, you should expect something closer to less than a week for a home to be on the market. If the home is not quite move-in ready, it's going to be at least a couple weeks before the home sells in West Cobb. So again, because there's less demand, it's not as expensive as East Cobb. You still get a lot of the similar Marietta amenities in West Cobb. That's why West Cobb is my favorite. And then in this part of Marietta here in the downtown area, this is probably where the demand is the lowest. People are not trying to buy homes from the 1920s or the 1930s, you know, even though it's very easy to walk around and you have great walkability in this part of town, it's still not like the most desirable. The schools aren't great around this part of town, and you couple that with the higher prices and the older homes. Really what people are doing is buying like old homes to maybe turn them into Airbnbs. So you have quite a bit of investment properties around here, but as far as primary residences, this is not really super common. Of course there are, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that nobody is buying primary residences around the downtown part of Marietta, but it's just not as common. To give you just an idea of just how old this part of Marietta is, this is a train track here, and the train still regularly runs through here. I wouldn't doubt it actually if it comes by here any minute. But these buildings here were like, probably one of these was like the old train station where people used to catch the train. Now people don't ride on the train. Now it's like the train is used for like industrial purposes, carrying goods and stuff like that. People don't ride on this train now, but it used to be for that. And this is like the old buildings from the old part of Marietta. This is actually the Marietta History Museum. They're calling it the History Center. I'm not exactly sure why they call it the Kennesaw House, but it is a historical Marietta area. Historical Marietta Museum. I mean, you really get a good feel for just how old the city is back here. All around the square, they have these big murals here. This is super common, so I'm trying to find one specific. Actually, it's right up here. This Marietta sign, this Marietta mural up here is like super popular, well known. Let's see if we can get a good shot of it. This is the iconic Marietta sign over here. There really is so much rich history here in Marietta, and so many people who live here, including myself, just love this area. It is a great part of town to live in. Of all of the suburbs of Metro Atlanta, in my opinion, Marietta is the best one. We have so many good things going here. Not only the schools and the home prices, but also the people here are so courteous. The families here, everybody is, you know, very, well, not everybody, but of course, a lot of people are very polite here. It's a great part of town to live in. Definitely a lot of great things going for it here in the city of Marietta. If you want to know more about what the houses are like here in Marietta, I actually went on a tour of a home. We can see the inside of that home. You can check out that video right here. I'll see you in the next one.